Hey design enthusiasts! Welcome to Next in Line Design, a podcast by the World Design Organization's Young Designers Circle. We're all about embracing a new mindset in design, one that's bold, innovative, and impactful. We're here to connect with the next wave of design talent and explore how you can use your creativity to make a real impact. Get ready for fresh ideas and inspiration from young designers around the world who are reshaping the industry. We're here to spark conversations, inspire change, and explore new ideas in design. But remember, these are just our perspectives on one big, evolving field. Please note that the opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official views of the World Design Organization or its affiliates. Let's dive in and see what's next in line.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Next in Line Design podcast. I'm Leslie Sern, your host for this episode. I'm an industrial designer currently based in Madison, Wisconsin, working in the medical manufacturing space. My background is in sculpture and multimedia design, and I'm passionate about accessibility and sustainability. I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome you to this week's episode of our podcast. If you're new here, this space is all about amplifying the voices of young designers and changemakers as they share their journeys and the innovative ways they're shaping the future. In today's episode, we're focusing on Sustainable Development Goal 11, which is sustainable cities and communities. With climate disasters escalating around the world, from the ravaging California wildfires to the escalating earthquakes in Japan, it's clearer than ever that our urban spaces need to be more resilient. While communities consistently rally together in times of crisis, these events are a wake-up call for deeper systemic change in how we design our infrastructure. I'm beyond excited to introduce today's guest, Natasha and Isabella Tanjutco, two incredible sisters from the Philippines who have been leading community-focused nonprofits since they were 5 and 7 years old. Their work is a powerful testament to how local action can drive meaningful change, and they're here to share how they've contributed to building stronger, more sustainable communities. Their stories are nothing short of inspiring, and I know you'll come away with a new perspective on how design and community action can come together to create real, lasting change. Ready to hear their stories? I know I am. Let's dive in. So Tasha and Bella are co-founders of the change agency Tayo House of Culture and Creativity, a community crafting design solutions with their archipelago for ecology, sustainability, and ESG programming, and a 100% youth-led movement called Kids for Kids, which crafts creative and cultural hubs from libraries to parks and playgrounds for climate action. Hi, Tosh. Hi, Bella. Can you tell us a bit about yourselves and the work you're doing?
Yeah, hi. So I'm Bella. I am a Filipino designer from the Philippines, but I studied and just graduated college here in New York. Me and my sister, we both started our organization back in 2015 when we were just 13 and 15. And we now also co-founded our design studio called Tayo that you just mentioned back in 2018. So we're super excited to be here.
Yes. Hi, and I'm Tasha. I'm also the co-founder of Kids for Kids and Tayo together with Bella. We started it at a really early age. So since then, I guess growing up, it was really all about culture and sustainability and also seeing how we could solve these things creatively. And I'm currently based in the Philippines and really focusing now on working together with a lot of indigenous and local community leaders to really see how they can be the ones to lead our, I guess, conservation and regeneration efforts together with Tayo and Kids for Kids.
All right. And Bella, you just mentioned that you graduated, which is a huge milestone, by the way. Congratulations.
Yeah.
How did you manage everything on top of still being a student?
Well, since most of the on-ground work, I'd say, I think Tosh could also attest to this, was when we were in high school, when we were starting our organization, Kids for Kids, because we never meant for it to become an organization. Well, when you're like 13 and 15, it was really more of a movement together with friends. And we're so lucky and grateful that it has become as big as it is today. And we're so happy that a lot of kids have this platform now to be able to make a change more accessibly. And so it was really hard juggling that in high school, I feel like, because we would come back home at like 4 p.m. and then do homework and then still do kind of like work for the organization. But the thing is, when you're in high school, a lot of the things that we did was really like the whole point was making change fun. And so all of our, whether it be outreaches or events or programs, is all really to, make new friends and kind of make that whole aspect really fun for people. So in our heads, it wasn't really work. It was more of we're having fun, and we wanted that to kind of be the perspective of making change, since it was such an intimidating kind of word, like, oh, let's make change, like for young people. So that's what Kids for Kids was, and that's how it grew to what it is today. Definitely, we had a lot of like learning curves creating this organization. I'd say our time management was really bad. I mean, we would cram a lot of things. Typical like student run organization. I mean, no one is perfect. Everyone's kind of like trying to like deal with things. We would bite off way more than we could chew, definitely. But I feel like everything worked out because of the support system we had. We had amazing volunteers, amazing collaborators, who were all supportive of Kids for Kids and the mission. So honestly, it really does take a village. And we're so grateful to have had the village we did when we were younger, creating this organization. But definitely moving to New York and going to university right after co-founding Tayo was a bit of a challenge, because there's a 12-hour difference between Manila and New York. So I'm just so lucky that we had a team in Tayo who were able to do the on-ground work, and I stepped back as a consultant, because I think we learned from Kids for Kids that I couldn't handle like university and moving plus work as well. So I helped out where I could, and Tosh was able to spearhead it while I was away. But now I'm moving back home, and as we're both not students anymore, but now we say like we're students of the world, we're always learning, and now we can 100% focus on the work that we do right now.
I guess jumping off from what Bella was talking about on Thai, on where it is today, I think what's really exciting is that more people are now understanding what we were trying to do when we were like 18 and 16. So we co-founded Tayo in 2018 when I graduated high school, because we were doing a lot of work at Kids for Kids, which mobilized a lot of young people, worked directly with people on ground. And a lot of, I guess, companies and organizations were picking up on that. And they were wondering how we were being able to activate so many people, even though we were so young, and do it in a way that made people listen, especially when you're talking about not just, of course, really heavy hitting issues like the climate crisis in the Philippines, but also from disaster risk reduction to even online abuse and exploitation of children. We were really trying to, I guess, mark out what were these hard hitting issues in the Philippines, and how do we actually use design to make people understand it. And so when companies started reaching out and asking us at like ages of 16 and 18, you're kind of like, we're willing to do anything to like help you out, because that was our goal. It was systems transformation. Until actually our parents guided us through this, because they were always our number one support system and told us, you're being exploited by these companies. There's this thing called being consultants. It's an actual thing. And that's when we realized, okay, so co-founding some sort of sustainability consultancy back in 2018 was something we wanted to do, to hold all our different youth initiatives. Because beyond Kids for Kids, we even co-founded Habilin, which is dedicated to like education and creating educational material and redesigning that. We co-founded Retaso, which is upcycling textile waste. So we had a lot of active initiatives, and Tayo was able to kind of also become this umbrella company that held all our different design solutions that we created for these different prevailing issues. And when we co-founded Tayo, not many people understood why we were even there yet, until we would actually explain, okay, because, companies actually need sustainability programs. You need to be talking about how to activate young people, because the tides are shifting, especially with our generation. We're so active and hands-on. We are not waiting until we're much older or in the workforce to actually do something about the world. So that's when people started actually really understanding what it was. And then today, with this whole new shift into ESG, so many companies are looking to add environmental and social causes into their portfolio, but more often than not, they greenwash or they youth wash. So our goal is to really help them avoid that and to see how we can really work together towards a world where young people aren't just used as tokens, but really active in these spaces, because these spaces define their future. So yeah.
And just starting all these initiatives so young, I can imagine it's just like trial by fire, trying to figure out what worked and what didn't. What role does collaboration play in designing for sustainable cities, and who would you say are your key partners right now?
I think for us, definitely, because through Kids for Kids and Tukod Foundation, which is the bigger foundation that actually handles also all our processing, it's really dedicated to Filipino design. So Tukod itself, which I currently am executive director of, is actually the legacy of my grandfather, who was who's a national artist for architecture. So growing up, we definitely were surrounded by the idea that Filipino culture was something that was present in design everywhere and should be present in design everywhere. So one of our key partners, really, which he also advocated a lot for, was using indigenous and native and local vernacular materials. And that really comes with working with the people closest to the land. And so our main partners, even growing up, was really understanding how to work together with our indigenous people, especially our indigenous leaders and cultural bearers like Maria Toddy of Lake Cebu. We've really found it amazing to be able to understand how indigenous leaders should really be at the forefront and also partners and anyone that works in sustainability. And so we really do take pride in, when we are saying we are a sustainability consultancy, we talk a lot about vernacular and neo vernacular processes of design. And indigenous communities really are the ones who are the authors of this. So we've been so lucky to be able to also, I guess, have exposure at an early age to understanding that indigenous people aren't the past. They really are the ones that actually carry all our culture with us. And so also working with communities in the front lines of the climate crisis that do carry the same resiliency. We work a lot with remote island communities in the Philippines and island communities that are disappearing. So especially in areas that have high tourism now, we're trying to also save our spaces from being gentrified into another Bali. And we've really wanted to work together with our island leaders. So I think Bella can share a little bit more about our island communities too.
Yeah, so when we talk about like our main collaborators, we started with people like the youth when we were younger, and I think it has continued until now. So adding on to our island leaders, a lot of our key partners are the youth or the people, our volunteers, our people in Kids for Kids who span nationwide and even to the diaspora as well. Those are our key collaborators and our team members. And then we also have our island leaders. So as Tasha mentioned, we do collaborate a lot with remote islands in the Philippines. And this started because a lot of them needed a lot of help during the typhoons over the pandemic. Unfortunately, our emergency and disaster risk reduction and response isn't as efficient. And so we took it upon ourselves to help those most in need. And that was the people in the remote islands. And so we partnered with around 3 or 4 off the coast of Siargao, one of the main kind of surfing capitals in the Philippines right now, and also a really hot spot right now for tourism, which is becoming an issue. On our way from Siargao are these remote islands, Halian, Suyangan, and Ahawan. And those are the ones we partner with. And these are the people who we get the most inspiration from, because being an archipelago in the Philippines, and we talk a lot about Filipino architecture, it's a lot of community, and we see the most Filipino culture in terms of community with these islands, how they help each other, how they're so creative, and how they bring this creativity into forms of like livelihood and to forms of bringing people together. And so that inspires us a lot. And so together with the island leaders, we help them rebuild their schools and their homes, and boats as well. But more importantly, focusing on the schools, because more often than not, when these schools get destroyed by typhoons, because it's government built, they'll have to wait for the government to rebuild it. But we're lucky enough that we're able to get approval from the government to be able to step in and help rebuild it as fast as we can. So that's what we're doing right now. And definitely we are consulting, and it's a very collaborative process with the island leaders. Something we want it to be something sustainable, because if the climate crisis is going to worsen, that means more typhoons. And so we want kids to have these spaces to learn in, that is long term and that is beneficial for them and for their futures. And so, as Tasha mentioned, we learn the most from the people we collaborate with. It's not just us, it's a whole team of youth who are behind Tayo, a whole team of youth behind Kids for Kids. And beyond that, all the island leaders, all the cultural leaders who always act as our mentors and guiding us through the process. And really, it's a whole team effort. And as I mentioned, it does take a whole village to actually make a change. And so we're very grateful for ours.
Yeah, it's really cool just seeing how connected you are with your community. I know in the United States, collaboration can sometimes just be like a surface level word. How do you ensure that the voices of your collaborators are actually heard and integrated into the design process? And how would you say other companies can start implementing that better?
Yeah, what I noticed in the West is that in terms of collaboration, sometimes it's more of being a voice for other people, but we don't necessarily believe in that. We believe in passing the mic to them and letting their voice be heard and giving them that platform to talk about themselves and to talk about what they need. And so when it comes to collaboration, it's really developing that relationship with them. Because again, collaboration isn't something that's transactional. We don't take from each other. We learn and we grow together. Because when we partner up together and collaborate together, good things happen. And it's not something that it's just like I benefit and then they benefit. So it's really fostering that relationship with them. And we've been working with these island communities since 2020. So around 5 years now. And it's really fostering how you would kind of want to help out a friend. You kind of build that relationship and friendship with them. It's the same for any person and anybody. We don't want to come here as quote unquote saviors and help them, because that's not that. We learn so much from them more often than not. So it's really first and foremost talking to them, speaking to them, hearing their needs, and also why are we forming this relationship in the first place, and why is this collaboration even happening? I think that's the biggest thing that people need to ask when collaborating with people, is really the why and sticking to it. And not only because also I noticed here in the West, when it comes to co-creating or collaborating, more often than not, it's the people who initiate it, or the let's say in terms of design, the designers who benefit the most, and the community kind of gets left as something that is on the website or on the Instagram, or kind of on the side, but they don't really benefit the most from the project. And me and my sister, when it comes to design with communities, we always believe that, paying them fair wage isn't enough. That's the bare minimum. We have to always go beyond that. So going beyond that means to also kind of make their dreams come true. Both dreams need to come true equally. And so that's what collaborative design means to us. It's that if both dreams are realized equally or even more, and so that's what we have been doing with these communities that we work with. So it's not really a transactional thing. It's not just for a project. It's really just forming these lifelong relationships as a community, as friends. So, yeah.
Yeah. And just to add a little bit to that, I think it's really something concrete. It's as simple as knowing their name and acknowledging it. We really see how in a lot of different projects, for example, when people post about it or talk about the project team, they just mention the community as a whole, like a collective. But if you're actually working them, you know their names and you know how to acknowledge them. And so we even do that when when we're doing now materials research with the seamstresses we work with. We tell them to embroider their names in the work that they do, because a lot of people don't realize there are people behind these processes. So, like, for example, one of the main, youth that we work with in island communities, her name's Lady. So she has been a really amazing, I think, beacon of light for her community as well, because beyond her island community, she really sees how the lessons that come from such a small island can really solve global solutions. So Lady has been so amazing in being an example for the youth of her island. And we've been working with Richmond for so many years now, really. And being someone who comes from these areas, we really take his lead. So it's knowing how to also see these people as long-term friends. And it isn't just about the project that you're working on, but also acknowledging, like what Bella said, their dreams.
Yeah, it's definitely something I haven't really thought about. Just that personal connection. It's something that's missing in the West, not even knowing people's names or just the reason why collaboration is happening. And just building these relationships with people, that's so important to creating a successful collaboration, really. And like, not even just between like design firms and communities, it can also be with design firms and the environment itself. We did talk a bit about the different types of climate disasters that have been like on the rise in both the Philippines, in Japan, in the world in general. And just with all of these disasters, it's more important than ever to design communities that can adapt to their surroundings. How do you balance designing for resilience versus sustainability?
That's such a good question, because I feel like people always think it's one or the other. But when it comes to really what is something sustainable, you also have to first and foremost design with the land. So a lot of people, especially here in the Philippines, the hard part is accessibility to material, especially when a typhoon comes. And so normally they just send over like concrete, GI sheets, or anything that can kind of just quickly create a house. The problem with that, it doesn't become sustainable because the availability or accessibility of that material is not really available everywhere. And more often than not, what we have to be thinking about when we create these spaces is what are the natural materials available and how do you actually innovate those to create a space that will allow people to build it back on their own, especially when a typhoon comes. So there is always that debate whether it should be made, for example, from vernacular material so that it's something light and easy, and if it gets torn down, they can easily replace it with the environment around them. Or it's creating this structure that withstands like typhoons and flooding and tsunamis and creating this giant concrete structure. So the problem with kind of like the either or there is within the Philippines, no one really actually takes into account long-term sustainability of these buildings. Because people in the Philippines so easily tear down even heritage structures, and with that, people don't really appreciate architecture and how it can actually shift cities. So our whole goal, I guess, in Kids for Kids is showing also how architecture is a key to actually designing sustainability and livelihood and economy. And even if we aren't architects ourselves, we understand that people should be thinking about this first and foremost when they develop cities. And that developing cities doesn't always have to be what like New York looks like or what London looks like. And developing cities can look like, you know, what it used to be before also, and how can we innovate that in a new vernacular way. So our goal is actually to show people that cities don't have to be concrete and stiff and, you know, in silos. We can work like an archipelago. We can really flow with the land, and you can build cities that actually create harmony versus division.
I think Tosh answered beautifully. But same. I think resilience and sustainability actually like need each other, because for something to be sustainable, it needs to be resilient. It needs to withstand the natural disasters that are occurring. So it's really designing with the land and also designing with the people. So for something to be both sustainable and resilient, it is also kind of mimicking the resilience of the community and what they want and what they think benefits them. Because at the end of the day, whatever we're building is going to be for the land and for the people. So they both are key elements of what has to be included in the design and everything. I think that's how we also do in Kids for Kids, is that, okay, we're going to be here giving advice or expertise on how we're going to be doing the building, but we conduct workshops and we collaborate with the community really in what they want, how they live, what their lifestyle is, and also what's available in the land that can make it sustainable and resilient for the future years to come, and also kind of projecting it into the future of, all of these typhoons that the Philippines is going to experience sooner or later. So what Tasha said, it's really designing with the land and also with the people who live in it.
I cannot remember the name of it right now, but I know you guys are working on a project that's like developing a community that just focuses on basically everything that we talked about. Can you remind me what it's called?
Yes, it's called Balayatu.
Yes, Balayatu.
So Balayatu is one of the projects that we started with a long series of kind of a whole campaign that we started called Kapuluan ng Kabataan, meaning like the archipelago of the youth. And Balayatu is kind of like the first pilot cultural center. We call it like me and Tasha always have a hard time like kind of explaining what it is, because it is everything that the youth needs. I guess in our journey towards, kids, like when we were younger, Kids for Kids, and then, learning about, as you get older, like the intersection between social justice and climate justice, and also being designers ourselves, we kind of saw a gap between all of these conferences and conventions and going to COP. There was a lack of Indigenous leaders, lack of youth, lack of environmentalists. There was a lack of creatives in the space, and creatives who actually were seen as equals with the business men and the corporations and the diplomats. I mean, the fact that the fashion industry isn't really a big category in COP when we went in COP 26, and that's been 26 years of COP, is crazy, knowing the damage that the fashion industry has been doing on the environment for years and also people. So that's when we decided, there needs to be a space where all of these people, young artists, young creatives, environmentalist scientists, designers, Indigenous leaders, Indigenous people, organizers all come together with, business leaders, corporations, organizations, where we're all seen as equals in order to kind of unite to exchange ideas and brainstorm, and kind of this cross-cultural sharing of how we can come up with different climate solutions for our island and for our archipelago. Also because, again, we're an archipelago, very far flung. A lot of people don't understand how big the Philippines actually is and how far apart some of our islands are, but also how sometimes some of them are closer together. We wanted to create this space that can act as a gathering point where we can all, as people who live in different regions and provinces and islands in the Philippines, because we all have very, very different cultures, that this diversity is our strength, and that the experiences that we learn as different people of the Philippines, we can all have this little home called Balayatu where we can come together and share our experiences and different climate solutions that we can use to kind of empower each other to power our nation. And that was really the idea of Balayatu, because we felt that we needed this space, and it was so needed to kind of unite everyone together. And Tosh can add more on like the details of it, but yeah.
Yeah, so Balayatu, like how we summarize it, is it's a youth curated cultural hub and creative space for archipelagic action and cultural transformation. So what we realized is within, I guess, again, cities, is there is this kind of like already cookie cutter image and picture of what that would look like, which are tall buildings, and then with like green infrastructure somewhere with proper certifications and like solar powered things. But I just find it so weird that this is always kind of like with the picture of development, when we know in places like the Philippines it shouldn't be, because it ends up actually destroying the natural beauty of our country. So we realized we needed to create spaces that actually reflected the natural beauty of the Philippines and our natural heritage that is slowly being lost to this idea of sustainable development. Because even when you look at the SDGs themselves, it's divided into silos, which makes it hard for people in the Philippines to also digest what what is different from life below water, what's different to life on land, what's different from climate action. Because here, everything really, we view the world as an archipelago where everything is interconnected and everything is one ecosystem. And so that runs deeply in our culture, not really being able to kind of divide things that way. So through these cultural spaces, it's really also trying to show the global world what sustainability is beyond the SDGs as well, and how you can actually localize the understanding of sustainability into cultural contexts. So we realized creating these physical spaces would be the best way possible, because if people come to visit the Philippines, where can we bring them to show them the beauty of our islands if they come to Manila and it's this urban area? So creating spaces like Balayatu is kind of, I guess, the goal in a lot. We're focusing in these urbanized areas, trying to kind of go that direction of creating tall buildings and everything. It's creating these hubs where now you have young people kind of taking the lead to asking, is this really the way we're supposed to be going? And when even typhoon comes and we have to do relief really quickly, these spaces act as like youth hubs for everyone to congregate and create action quickly. So the whole goal is kind of like, if you can't exactly work with the government, it's out organizing them. And that's what we've been doing with all these spaces. It's really trying to find avenues where the young people lead the sustainability conversation within their community and make that intergenerational as well. So we're hoping that these hubs are actually spaces that even people who come from other countries, when they visit the Philippines, can now understand ultimately what Filipino culture is and what Filipino sustainability looks like. They can meet with local leaders, with cultural bearers, and the stories can actually come from the people on ground, because people don't realize how rich the culture of the Philippines is. Because even if you Google our country, you'll just see white beaches, really pretty looking I guess landscapes, but people don't realize how rich also the culture is of our people and the stories we have to tell. So these spaces hopefully will house all of that as if they were like mini living museums, also trying to decentralize Manila, not just being, the capital where everyone kind of flocks to, but seeing how we can regionalize also everything and showing them that what Manila is shouldn't be the picture of development, and it really should be individualized per island, but also come together as an archipelago through our culture.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm so excited to see the future of Baliatu and what you guys create. And my brain is just thinking, how can we just take that concept and apply it to different countries as well to get that all-encompassing culture and just not just like pigeonhole countries into a certain stereotype and everything. But we are coming to the end of the episode, and as we're closing out, just like to ask you a few questions. Like, what advice would you give to young designers who want to break into the space and don't know where to start?
I'd say, well, for me, something that's really helpful is learning from people who are already doing the work. I feel like as a young designer, there are a lot of inspirational designers already out there in the industry who are doing amazing work, and learning from them can enrich you so much more than what's being taught in university or what's being taught in school, especially interviewing different designers who come from different backgrounds or different countries as well, because the situations can be very different, but then they could also, give you new insights. The different, how they kind of design towards like the different situations in their country, and also the different situations that the climate is causing on their country, because everyone kind of experienced the climate crisis a bit differently. I just came from one of like the World Around Summits recently that me and my sister we were nominated for the program, and so I was able to attend in the MoMA, and there were literally like so many different architects speaking, and it was really, really insightful, and it's just learning from. And in that summit, that also the winners were young designers as well. Amara, who is 17, she's doing amazing work in Nigeria. And, these people are just so inspirational. And there's so many more young designers out there in the world doing so much amazing work. So connecting with them, learning from them. Me and my sister actually, like when we started Kids for Kids, we wanted to find other young organizations around the world that we could learn from, or people we could connect with. But in 2015, they there weren't a lot, or we didn't have access to learning the different youth organizations out there, but we were able to connect with Bioplastic Bags, which is headed by Malati and her sister Belle. And they were kind of like our first like international like youth organization friends, and until now like we're connected and we learn so much from each other. Also through Balayatu, connecting with all these indigenous leaders and indigenous youth and different youth nationwide has been so enriching and so inspiring. So really, when you come out of school and you know call yourself a designer, even when you're young, you can call yourself a designer. Just kind of connecting with people and learning from them, because we never stop learning, I think is something very important. And we can even like join what they're doing or create something on your own. But I feel like learning from each other first and foremost is very, very important, especially if you're gonna do something site specific as a designer as well. Like me and my sister, like before doing anything in Kids for Kids, we wanted to learn the communities we were working with. We wanted to learn about their land. We wanted to learn about their culture. That was very, very important. So, yeah.
And then I think, yeah, to go off on what Bella was saying about intergenerational work, it's so important. So for young designers to really do the research also on who has been kind of advocating for certain things for a really long time before they were even born, and how can you kind of carry on that work and build on top of that, because I think the goal is always to make it better for the next generation of kids. So how can you also kind of start early? Because lucky for my sister and I, we planted a seed like so many years ago, and now we were able to see it grow into a garden, and then now slowly it's going to become a forest within our lifetime. So it's really understanding also how, if you're in a space, if you're lucky enough, or if you're in a space of privilege, acknowledge that, rather than kind of shutting off, the bad news, or kind of gatekeeping, or finding privilege as a weakness because you feel like you won't really understand the realities of the world. Instead, kind of use it as a key to liberate people. I think that's the whole goal, is if you kind of have resources, or if you're blessed with a lot, it's really finding ways or more access for liberation. And what's been really nice about working with a lot of young people here in the Philippines is there are a lot of people who aren't afraid to speak up about the West Philippine Sea issues, about Palestine. Like everything is really out in the open, because we really believe the only way to actually get to you know creating a better world is not always just to be talking about how we have to save it, and we have to save the world together, because that kind of comes with a savior complex and this othering. But it's really all about also re-enchanting it and remembering our world, what were all these different lost and traditional and ancient values that we actually need to bring back. And how do we work with young people, indigenous leaders, people from different generations to do exactly that? And luckily, because of the work I also get to do with National Geographic, together with my friends Isa Bart and Gab Mejia, visiting all 17 regions of the Philippines and creating this archipelagic network, we really now believe that we have to also design like an archipelago, and not just coming from the Philippines or being Filipino, but it should be everyone around the world. Seeing our entire world as an archipelago, not as separate countries that have boundaries and silos, but really connected by the water. And I think that is proof with, for example, if you come from Southeast Asia, even the language that's spoken in the Philippines, in Thailand, there's a lot of resonance when you see the water as a connection versus as a divide. And again, it's as simple as when you're designing cities, you're an architect, water is the first thing you should be looking at, because it is the source of life. So I hope that kind of gave like a little bit of hope, because as much as the world is kind of terrible right now, the whole goal is to make it better for the next set of kids coming.
Yeah, speaking of, I just love how you just connected everything together, just past of your heritage, just your influences growing up, but also that makes me very curious to your answer for this next question, which is, how do you envision the role of design evolving in creating sustainable cities within the next 10 years?
I feel like jumping off from what Tasha said, the future of design is actually now, and it's viewing the world not as we say, like viewing the world as an archipelago, that everything is connected by waters and not divided from it. And so when we think of it that way, we think of that everything that we do affects another person, whether it be in our community or in our country or even in the world at large. I think the future of design is designing for other people, designing for our land, and designing for the present and the now, for the next generation to come. Because the next generation is already present, they're already here. Some of them are already going to school, some of them are already entering high school. And I think when we think of designing and designing for like the future, it's designing for the now, because we also don't have the luxury of time, but we do have the accessibility and the privilege to be, involved in different communities that we can learn from each other and we can collaborate and do things better together. And so when we started Balayatu, that was the whole point. It was really to unite people together because, as Tasha mentioned, we've been living so much in like silos, and especially living in the West for 4 years, I see that a lot. Especially when it comes to design, it's like even in schools, it's like they're different majors. Like, okay, it's either you're in fashion or you're in illustration, or you're in product, but it's like there are a lot of people who work in different mediums. And we should stop kind of separating each other into different categories, because that just separates the work from each other. Why can't business leaders and business corporations also be involved in creative work and also kind of see themselves as creatives and designing new solutions and systems for the next generation and the future of our world? And so I feel like the future of design is very much intersectional, and it's very much like an archipelago where we are all interconnected with each other rather than divided from one another.
Yes, I super agree with that. The future of design really is indigenous. It's looking back at what we've forgotten and also showing people that if you are in corporate business spaces, you shouldn't be forgetting these indigenous values. What I really noticed really is there's this resurgence of acknowledgement of the land, which I really appreciate in Western nations now. But even in countries like the Philippines, I think we should also be talking about that because Manila itself wasn't just a colonial city. Before that, there was culture here. And it's now trying to resurface that as well and also trying to slowly decolonize the way our education works. So the future, I think, of design, like everywhere, should be understanding now how indigenous culture needs to kind of flow back into it, but also how looking at this idea of archipelagic design being a post-colonial movement. Like we had to kind of witness being oppressed and trying to really, you know, kind of keep quiet all these years. And now it's really time to kind of tell people that, we've found their voice and that we really need to start working with all these indigenous communities that have this culture for a really long time, but also working with frontline communities most affected by the climate crisis, like our island communities, and seeing how their culture can actually solve global issues because these islands are disappearing and the designs they're coming up with are seeing how they can actually sustain their culture beyond that. And that's the same with the rest of the world. Sea level rise affects everyone. So how do we now design together with people that understand these cultures? And what's been really great, I think, especially here in the Philippines, is the young people aren't afraid to do that. We've really gotten rid of this idea of othering already, and slowly getting there. It isn't perfect, but the future of design should be like that, where in business rooms and boardrooms are starting to make decisions with indigenous people there, especially, for example, in places where there are summits or conferences, that you need to start including really young and indigenous and women-led voices in these spaces, because these are the people that carry the culture that keeps our world alive. And it's been so nice, I guess, through Tayo, we're trying to really make room for that, because even in these places where they talk quote unquote business, these should be the places where you're really again talking about culture, because businesses are going to start kind of dictating what the culture is, and it shouldn't be like that. It should really be the culture that leads. So our hope is that designers all over the world start evaluating where the culture comes from, what heritage is, and also trying to understand how you can work with women, with youth, with indigenous leaders, and really create a space that is safe for them to talk rather than just being tokenized. The whole goal really is, again, to always use design to liberate communities. And we've been so lucky to work alongside people, collaborators within Tayo. A lot of us are, most of us are girls in the company. So it's also been really nice to see how,
being storytellers, that has all of a sudden become what the future is. And storytelling is one of the most ancient forms of design. So it should be something integrated in everything.
Like, as a designer or student or even just a person, what would you say would be an actionable step we can take to make the world more sustainable and collaborative?
I think going back on one of the ones I mentioned when it comes to collaboration is really knowing their names versus, just saying, oh, we work with local communities. Who are the communities? Who are the people in them? And how do you acknowledge them properly? I think that's one way towards sustainability, because you can't sustain anything if you don't have a personal relationship with someone. You don't have a friendship. And that should kind of be the basis of the work that everyone's doing together. I think another one is really learning about the culture that was once there on the land that you're on, because that I think applies to everyone, even if you are in the Western world. All of us, all the more, I think, if you are in the Western world, it's really asking who is there before you, and how can you actually acknowledge them in the process. And then I think the last step really is working with your contemporaries. I think that's one thing we've realized also that's so important. It's who are the people around you that are kind of going to become the business leaders, the next president, the next people in those boardrooms, and how do you start working with them now to get them to understand that this is what's going to be needed when they get to those positions. So it's really all about creating community, but seeing how community, instead of creating a monolith, it's all about really uplifting the diverse voices and getting everyone in not just the same table, but also in the same discussion, allowing everyone to speak and passing the mic on. Yeah, and similarly, like as a student, as Tasha mentioned, working with your contemporaries, it's also collaborating with your classmates. I think that's something I wish I did when I was in university more often. But again, as Tasha mentioned, the future of the creative industry are the people you are already studying with or in the rooms with. So collaborating with them and practice respectful collaboration with your classmates is the most important. And if you're not in the university or in school, really just your friends and people you also see as someone you can work with creatively and who will respect your process.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. It was so insightful, just getting to know your stories, your current projects, and all the advice and life lessons that you've learned along the way.
We're super happy and we're so grateful to be on this podcast with you guys. Or maybe you can share where people can read more about the work, just a little bit. So if they listen, you can see more of our work on Instagram. Mainly, we're most active there. So Kids for Kids PH and Archipelagic Design on Instagram. And we're currently working on our website, so that's in the works. But then it'll be linked on our Instagram. But yeah, that's where we're most active, honestly. So yes.
All right.
Also, work with our remote island, Halian. So they actually have their own Instagram that they run. It's called Isla Halian. So yeah.
All right. Well, if you want to connect more and learn more about Tasha and Bella, just reach out to them on any of those platforms. And thanks for joining us today on this episode of Next in Line Design.
Next in Line Design is a podcast for designers by young designers. We hope that you really enjoyed today's episode. We've got some really exciting conversations coming up that we can't wait to share with you. Every episode, you're going to have the chance to meet a new member of the YDC. So enjoy our rotating cast of designers and feel free to reach out in the comments just to say hey, maybe to share some feedback, your story, or tell us more about the kind of conversations that you'd like to be hearing. In the meantime, make sure to subscribe to the WDO's channels and hit that notification bell so that you never miss an episode. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you back here soon with more of Next in Line Design.